So a bit about Zaizi. We're a small organisation, about 70 people. Our head office is in Hammersmith in London. We have a second large office in Colombo in Sri Lanka, and then a small footprint in Sheffield at the moment. Our prime business is providing database services. So you can view us as a data specialist organisation, historically around things like document and records management, but increasingly now that is just part of the overall data agenda. How do you manage data effectively? How do you unleash it, make it accessible? And we work with partners such as Talent, who are here today and speaking in a moment, AWS and others, to put together solutions that do a number of things. One, enable data to be managed successfully, cleansed, drive the quality into the data, automate wherever possible. I think everything these days should be about automation, make things straightforward and simple. Then ultimately, of course, unleashing that data so you can actually do the analytics and really place that analytics in the heart of your business. So the analytics of the data you've got real time to start to shape the services you're delivering. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure I'll come back to it during the morning sessions. So that's us. I'm very people focused. Being a small organisation, we do believe and hope that our core asset is our people. We strive to work collaboratively wherever we can, and it is the people that through that small supply make the difference. Who we work with? Well, a broad range of customers actually, but I think probably our core markets today are very much centred on local government. So our largest customer today is Ministry of Justice. We also work Home Office, Department of Education, local government, Bristol City Council, Hull City Council, and then a number of commercial clients as well. The nice thing for us, although having a focus particularly in the public sector, working with commercial clients just gives that crossover in terms of skills and capability. So I think part of the value we bring is an understanding of different sort of opportunities, if you like, we can bring from different sectors. So for us, although we focus on public sector, we do work with private sector clients, really for that purpose. So that's what we work with. And what we're about, as I've said this really, we really want to help public sector organisations maximise the opportunities that data now presents. There's an expression now everybody's using, data is the new oil. I mean, data is probably one of the core assets any organisation has. In my previous role prior to Zaizi, I spent a lot of time talking to chief execs in local government, and I think all of them sensed that they were sitting on this asset, sitting on this data, didn't necessarily know what they could do with it, but also because of the pressures that all public sector organisations get, not necessarily pushing that data agenda up to the top of their list. So they're kind of aware they've got the assets, aware there's an opportunity there, but not necessarily pushing on with it. Although, as we're seeing with some of the work that Nesta's done, there are now quite a few case studies of local government organisations in particular starting to use data. So our goal in life as an organisation is to help public sector find the data, manage the data, make it accessible. Again, think about local government in particular, I'm sure some of your organisations as well, typically very complex IT environments, lots of systems, various ages, from some predominantly legacy systems through to new ones that you might be putting in today. On-site, on-premise, SaaS solutions, very complex environment. How do you make the data in that type of environment accessible and usable? How you manage that data? It's always a walls thing. Data can very easily become eroded in its value through lack of quality. So what sort of tools and processes can you put in place to manage the data and make it accessible? Clearly, provide compliance. Chris from Talent will talk about how you can meet compliance requirements such as GDPR by putting in tool sets and processes and systems. And then fundamentally, of course, clearly what it's really all about is using the data. And from that perspective, driving better decision making, innovating. Again, thinking very much of my local government background, the only real way that organisations, local government can achieve the the income and monetary goals they've got to meet is truly changing the way they deliver services. It's not a case of just kind of veneering a layer on top. Building a new website is absolutely about delivering services differently, more proactively, and data can be a big part of driving that. So creating innovative services and through that saving money, I think in public sector generally, unless you're very unique, saving money is always top of the agenda. I did meet a couple of councils who sat on huge business rates and so were actually quite cash rich. Firmly in the minority. So that's our goal in life, and we believe, and hopefully because you're here today you believe it too, we just think that getting data right, and we can talk about what getting data right means, but getting data right absolutely is the next phase of reform. Without using data, without getting in that usable state, without linking systems together, providing a platform where you can actually unleash the power of it, the public sector and the service provision in the public sector just won't reform at the pace and speed and provide the savings that's required. So that's the kind of premise of our business model and our approach to our client engagements. So the opportunities, so I've sort of talked about this a bit, there's certainly better policy making, using data to really input into the policy decisions that are being made in central, local health, make it real time, make it kind of, not retrospective, I think it's tended to be at best. Now make it very much real-time input. Bring the data scientists and people who understand data into the business, so link them into the policy teams. And examples now where data specialists are very much part of the teams that are developing these services. Really use data analytics. Data analytics has been around for donkey's years in various forms, and when I first started on data, I remember we were using data analytics, but now the opportunity to really use it and really use it to drive innovation, and particularly, as it says here, start to do early interventions, and local government particularly on the agendas. If you can get into something early and be in preventative mode, fundamentally it costs you a lot less than when you're reacting to a situation. Things like troubled families is one of the classic examples. If you can identify early through the data where your issues are, you can typically give prevention to solve that. And clearly in the health arena, huge opportunities to change the way as we as citizens think about our health, make it an individual responsibility, put the focus on prevention. Theory then is that you can save a lot of money around the treatments and things that will typically be the reactive intervention. So a lot of thought in terms of how we can move to more of a proactive intervention, and then just more joined up government, particularly in central government, how the departments and the different services can be linked better more effectively, including local government too. Those you hear are in local government, and you typically will collaborate with a lot of organisations locally, health sector organisations, other regional organisations, and the more you can join that up, the more you can provide a more coherent and more effective service level. So the opportunities are there. The challenges, again, it'll be interesting. Part of the agenda today, we've got a kind of more of a workshop discussion session for about an hour, so it'd be interesting to get your views and your organisations in terms of how you're finding it. But I think there is a general view at the moment that there's a lack of buy-in from senior managers and politicians around the value of data. I was at a council a couple of weeks ago talking to the IT and data team, and they were saying one of the challenges was they saw themselves one of the biggest opportunities was in adult social care and child care, but they found those teams who were delivering those services, just because of the pressure they were under and the nature of that, weren't necessarily aware or bought into not only what IT could deliver them in terms of helping provide better services, but particularly what opportunity data could provide. So I mean, there is a challenge in getting different parts of your businesses, the public sector organisations, understanding the power of data and putting that as a priority. So I think that is a challenge. Some politicians have sort of jumped on the agenda, but I think frankly not many in all honesty. So I think again, it's very early days in getting that buy-in. The challenge of sharing and integrating data, immediately you start sharing data, you get into privacy concerns. Again, I was working with some local government clients about a year or so ago, and they said one of the biggest issues was just trust. If you're sharing data between, say, a local authority, a health organisation, a charity, they have different cultures, different ways of working, and often it's a trust issue actually in getting people to consider sharing data. So how do you take care of the cultural issues? And then a huge agenda today. I mean, a lot of discussion on all forums at the moment about the skills challenge the UK and other countries face. Do your organisations have the skills to drive these agendas through? How do you do that? How do you increase the skills you've got? And as a country, how do we develop skills? Clearly lots of discussion around apprenticeships and other schemes. AWS have their scheme for AWS Reinvent for people from the forces who can retrain into the technical arena, and there's other things like that. But there's a huge agenda around skills. And I think it's not just technical, there's the data skills, but there's also the business level skills around what, as I said before, the potential of data really is. There's challenges there, but we believe, our premise is that they're all solvable, providing you make it a priority and address them across the business. So that's a bit about us and why Zaizi are really focused on this data agenda, and why we're keen, I suppose, to hopefully talk to some of you today about your challenges in that arena. Nesta, they're an interesting organisation. They were originally established through funding through the National Lottery, so they're an endowment organisation focused on a number of things. It's where, if you haven't looked at them, well worth it. They get involved in an awful lot of areas. They work very collaboratively both in the UK and across Europe, looking at ways innovation can be driven through data, through technology, all sorts of clever stuff they get involved in. So well worth a look. We engage with them over some research, particularly they've done in the data area. They issued a couple of reports, some of you may have seen recently, talking about how data can benefit an organisation, how, in the case of a local authority, that local authority can become what they call a wise council, an intelligent council, using all their assets, using the data to really start shaping the services they deliver, and starting to look at what the challenges are and what practical tools can be put in place to actually start driving that kind of agenda. So if you haven't seen them, well worth a look, going to the Nesta site and having a look at that information. In fact, it's well worth signing up to their stuff anyway. It's a fairly constant feed of very good information. Examples they've worked with in the last report are here. So they looked at a number of councils that they felt were innovating today using data. So Manchester, who built this sort of multi-agency warehouse to connect agencies together and start to drive again that shared agenda. Kent County Council are one of the more advanced councils in terms of actually joining data sets together and producing this kind of almost big data repository of data that can be used for analytics. We talked about an example of Brighton, which was very specific in terms of looking at particular solutions to problems. I'll come on to the one they highlighted. Camden, who did a whole piece of work around data management, very early on in actual fact. I think Chris will touch on that in his presentation, where sort of 3 years ago they invested heavily in putting in the tools, processes and systems and culture to actually get data at the heart of how they drive things. And they certainly believe they've seen some significant savings and better service delivery through that. Newcastle, they've been focused on social care and how that can be challenged in data. Suffolk, similar thing, and Birmingham, and then Leeds City Council have developed this open data portal. So have a look at a few of these very briefly, and then we can touch on them in more detail during the morning if people would like to. What Nesta found, again, interesting, let's say during the day to get compared to your experiences, there's a number of ways today that councils can use data to optimise what they're doing. So optimise around the management of the place, so everything from libraries, buildings to access to community transport and those sort of things. For those of you not from local government, they tend to talk about place. That's the big focus in local government, the place where they operate. So Newcastle being that place. Testing what works, and that's very, I think for us, Zaizi as an organisation that develops software solutions, always having that iterative, continuous delivery model, testing, then reassessing, testing again, that kind of almost government digital service approach of just kind of getting a minimum viable product out and then just testing it in the communities you're trying to serve. So get into that type of environment, not assume that you know what's going to be the right solution, but actually develop something, test it, go back, test, go back. Intelligent case management, so rather than just everybody's probably got case management systems, but actually giving that case management a bit more intelligence around it in terms of using the data in there and using that data to think of more innovative ways of providing services. So all that data you've got, how can you actually use it to shape the services rather than just sitting there and potentially being an underutilised asset. Increasingly based on outcomes rather than sort of internal metrics, but looking at what really understanding what the outcomes you're trying to achieve. Early identification of adverse effects. I mentioned sort of troubled families, but looking at particular social issues or other sort of service-related issues and trying to identify what are early indicators to a problem, using tools, data analytics to find those early indicators and then using preventative techniques in theory to alleviate the problem. So again, it's trying to move away from reactive to a proactive service delivery. Starting to really understand citizen needs. Every council I've certainly talked to wants to get closer to the communities. It's understanding how you can capture people's views and bring that into your service delivery. It's a big opportunity there. Service transformation. absolutely. I've not met anybody who's not trying to transform their services, but again, how can you do that more intelligently? How can you do that actually in a way that you, as far as you ever can, will actually deliver? And there's a lot of transformation projects underway in organisations at the moment. Are those organisations confident they will actually deliver the benefits and savings they're hoping to? I'd argue probably not. So I think there's ways of actually getting more efficient to doing that. Streamlining your sort of operational part of the council. Again, obviously it's turning it on its head rather than the council being fairly inwardly focused historically, big back-end systems, a lot of kind of legacy IT systems, try and get the organisation starting from the, I suppose, consumer services user, which I don't particularly like, but you know, sort of the citizens, the people with who want to consume those services, and put them at the heart of your design. Open data. More and more organisations opening up how they share their data, putting in open data platforms and things like that to do all sorts of things. Bristol, for example, their agenda was to produce an open data platform where the citizens, third sector organisations, other private sector organisations could start to use data to provide you services. I mean, the one that's probably most referenced is Transport for London, particularly people who have lived in London or work in London. These days, services I use daily just to find out about travel and things, and you take for granted, but that all uses the data that they've surfaced up. So huge opportunity around open data. And then driving the economy, but also, again, we'll touch on this one in some of the other presentations, really helping to identify fraud and error. Big thing. Again, I was talking to a couple of district councils last year, and both of them have been fined quite heavily by DWP for issuing wrong benefit payments. You get the Information Commission's offices will clearly fine organisations for data breaches, and to some extent it's probably the tip of the iceberg. So all sorts of clever stuff that councils and other public sector organisations can start to do to just make sure services are being applied legitimately to the right people. And again, we'll talk about that through some particular demo later that we're going to do and things. So there's an opportunity to just get that piece right. I'm going to fly through these, I apologise for that for time, but these are just some examples. So in Manchester, one of the things they've done is they looked at the Troubled Families agenda, and a way of doing that to move to more of a proactive way of dealing with this is simplistically to join organisations together, join data together. It doesn't show very well here, but through joining the data together, through putting in clever analytics, they will start to do we need to go in and just do some advising around something. So it sounds simple, but the reality is the hard bit's in actually getting this visible and then getting people culturally used to using it. But it's a good example of the tools there in place to do this, and it seems the sort of thing to me that most organisations can benefit from, particularly when you've got very complex service lines and collaborations. Birmingham starting to use sensors. Here, gritting, for example, in winter, using sensors in the road to control how you grit the roads. You only grit when you need to. The other one I've heard councils talk about waste bins, where rather than you having a weekly round collecting waste, you have sensors in the bins, and your bin gets filled when it's emptied when it's full. So you actually shape your bin collection round to the need. More complexity behind that than that, because you've got to look at the efficiencies. There's all sorts of things where you can start to use IoT. Bristol has started to deploy IoT sensors on the lampposts, so they can start to actually control parking. So you can actually potentially have applications when you drive into Bristol. They're not there today, by the way, but you go into Bristol and street parking, you can see whether there's space available and go and park it and that sort of thing. So there's all sorts of clever stuff you can start to do with IoT, and that sort of feeds into the smart city agenda. One from Bristol in particular, highlights got big fraud. They had an issue in rented accommodation where a lot of the accommodation there was a damp issue. There was a challenge with landlords and people not taking it seriously. So they put in place a solution, these frog boxes, where basically it's a damp sensor presented in a very kind of, I suppose, friendly fashion, where you put that in the home and it effectively records the kind of temperature, humidity, the dew point, and enables the tenant to be in a stronger position in reporting damp and things in the house. Again, links in, because clearly damp houses and poor housing leads into social issues, healthcare issues and those sort of things. It's a very simple application in many respects, but potentially huge impact in terms of turning more to preventative service delivery again. I'm sure there's other examples throughout the country on this. Kent, certainly one of the more advanced data users as an area, as a location. They've built this big platform for getting the data all to link together and then starting to get other organisations sharing the data. So again, they're kind of building this kind of shared data repository to help them join services and organisations together. And final one, I think, at home here. We were hoping to actually get them to speak today, but unfortunately they weren't able to. But in Newcastle, again, the social care agenda, looking how you can start to shape how social care is delivered. Here particularly, it was joining up the data people in the organisation with the service delivery people. So data was put at the heart of the service delivery, and then you kind of get this constant feedback loop between the people analysing the data, looking at what's going on and feeding that into the service delivery. So in theory your service starts to become adaptable. Nice to say in theory, in practice I'm sure it's a lot harder, but that's the intent here, is to get the services, if you like, very much driven by the data that's coming out of them. So hopefully a virtuous loop. So Nesta then came up with some kind of insight on how to get started, how to sort of push them with your data. Some of these may sound obvious, so I think it's always worth spelling them out. You know, start with a clear problem. In data, sometimes the discussion can become quite abstract quite quickly if you're not careful. Really start with a clear view of what the problem is you're trying to solve and what your outcomes would be. The second one I think is critical. Work on the senior leadership to get buy-in and support, so people understand, you know, what you're trying to achieve. As with a lot of most projects, I think these days, start small, engage end users and start to develop services as you go along. Don't go for the big bang approach. Typically we found starting small is the best way to go. As I said, be clear about the ultimate objectives, know what you're trying to achieve and keep refining that. So always keep coming back to what you're trying to achieve and progress against it clearly. Ensure you've got realistic financial and staff resources. There's no point going into this if halfway through it you find just not got the commitment to get the right people in place, the right skills in place. Identify at the start, get the commitment there. As it says here, it's against that iteration piece. Start small, but also start in small chunks. So again, Zaizi being in the development world, we typically work in sort of agile and sprint type practices. Again, start in that kind of small chunk way. Get the information you need, expertise, testing at the heart of it. So always, again, this is really those of you who work kind of more government digital service approach and the agile approach is getting users engaged early on and making the users that you're trying to help ultimately at the heart of your service development. And be receptive to making decisions based on data. If you've got the data, if you're trying to use it better, use it and make the most out of it. And as I've said before, just keep evaluating the impact against the initially set objectives. So it is this kind of constant loop of just basically data informing what you're doing, shaping what you're doing, and iterating as you go along. That's me done. Almost on time. I think 1 minute over. So that's a bit about us, a bit about Nesta. As I say, if you haven't, I do encourage you to sort of look at what Nesta are doing. Just some really good background information, examples, and if you haven't engaged them, they're always, well, I'm probably speaking for, they're always quite keen to talk to organisations who are doing stuff in data. So if you want to sort of talk to them, I'm sure they'd be very keen to discuss things. So that's us. We believe getting data right really is the next stage of service reform.